Hey guys, welcome back to the Eaton Homestead. I'm Danielle and welcome to my garden. There's not a whole lot going on right now because it's January in Maine. But today I'd like to share with you a few of my seeds starting basic 101 things that I have learned over the years. Keep in mind, I'm not a professional. I am not an expert in any way. This is probably only my 4th or 5th year gardening in earnest. I'm still learning. I'm still researching and finding out new things all the time. But I would just like to share with you some of the things that I have learned over my years of gardening. Let's get inside where it's a little bit warmer. So one of the first things we have to talk about is why even start from seed to begin with. There are lots of really great nurseries out there where you can buy started plants. You can often find them in your big box stores. So for me, there are 3 really big reasons why I like to start from seed. The first reason is that it can be a huge cost savings. I say can with a caveat, in that if you can restrain yourself, which I often cannot, if you can restrain yourself from buying all the seeds, you can save a lot of money by starting your own from seed. And a good example of that would be tomatoes. For me, I grow a lot of tomatoes so that I can make tomato sauces and paste and diced tomatoes and all those things. So I grew, I think, around 60 tomato plants last year. And if I had bought 60 already started tomato seedlings at $3 or $4 a piece, that would really add up. Whereas I can buy a package or a couple packages of seeds and have more than enough to start all of that for the price of 1 or 2 seedlings. So again, it can be a huge cost savings. It also depends on where you're shopping. There are just innumerous seed companies out there. You can find lots of great ones. MI Gardener is one that I really enjoy. Seeds Now is one that I just am trying this year, so I can't really speak to how they've grown, but those, they offer 99-cent, $1 packages of seeds. They're much smaller packages. So oftentimes you get what you pay for. Other companies, their seeds can be a little bit more expensive, and definitely the more rare things are going to be more expensive. But on the whole, starting from seed will save you a lot more money than going out and buying all your plants as started plants. The second reason to start from seed is really out of necessity. So if you live in a climate like I do, I live in Maine, we are zone 5A, and we have a really short growing season. So your growing season is determined, it's the number of days between your last frost and your first frost. So these are really good things to look up. Here in Maine, where I live, I have about a 150-day growing season, and that's pretty short. So for things like tomatoes, I'll take this rose tomato, for example. So this is a rose tomato from MI Gardener. On the back of the package, it'll give you some information about its growing habits. And on this one, it's telling me that if I start it indoors, I should expect these seeds to germinate within 8 to 14 days. The days to maturity is 65 to 80 days, so that's adding on. It could take 8 to 14 days for this seed to germinate, and then once I transplant it outside, it's going to take another 65 to 80 days to come to full maturity and start bearing fruit. So I'm cutting it really close. Things like tomatoes, I could not just stick a seed in the ground and expect to get tomatoes within my 150 days of growing. I might get a couple, but it really would cut down on my overall productivity of my plants. So starting seeds indoors ahead of time gives me a jump start. So when I am ready, as soon as that last frost happens and it starts to warm up and the threat of my plants dying from cold has gone by, I can move all those outside, and I'll start harvesting tomatoes in August, which is really great, and then I'll continue harvesting them until the frost comes and kills those plants off. So it's really a necessity for a lot of things, especially for those of us who live in more frigid climates where our growing season is not as long. The third reason, and really the most important reason to me, why I like to start my garden seeds from seed, is because it really opens up a whole new world of food. Gardening is hard. There will be, if you're like me, lots of times where you just want to give up, where it gets too overwhelming, and you just want to throw in the towel. And it can especially be hard to continue to find that motivation when you go to the grocery store and you find the exact same thing that you are growing in your garden on sale for, whatever, 50 cents. And it's like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting in all of this energy and effort to try and grow my own food? So the exciting thing is that when you start things from seed, you can try varieties of things that you've never tried before. You can try whole new fruits and vegetables that you've never tried before. A great example of this is the Aunt Molly's ground cherry. I tried for the first time this year. I had seen it out on the internet and in blogs and stuff, and I thought, I've got to give that a try because I've never seen this before. This is so interesting. So I grew some. Oddly enough, I don't really love them, but everybody else in my family did. So my husband and my daughter and lots of family members, they all really, really enjoyed this. It's a really neat kind of cross between like a tomato and a tomatillo, like a cherry tomato. So they're very small and they kind of come in this little papery husk, but they grow in a papery husk, and they're just really fun. And I've never seen them anywhere. I've never seen them at the grocery store. I've never seen them on a menu. It's just something that's completely new to us and to our family. Cucamelons was another one that was really fun to grow, and I had never seen that before. So I think that growing things that are rare, or that are, even when it comes down to the varieties of things, like the varieties of tomatoes that you can grow at home are vastly different than the sort of like very regular tomato that you find at the grocery store, and they taste completely different. Another one would be strawberries. I think this has always been my biggest pet peeve is strawberries don't taste like anything like strawberries. When you buy strawberries from the grocery store and they're huge and they clearly have been pumped up with something, I don't know, they taste nothing like what a real fresh and off the plant strawberry tastes like, which is just so sweet and so good. And I find that the things that we buy at the grocery store just taste very bland to me. It really feels like it doesn't have a lot of flavor. So that's where growing from seed gives me a lot of motivation to keep going, especially in those hard times. If I've started that plant, I've started it from seed, I really want to get a harvest off of it because I know that I can't just go to the grocery store and get it. It makes it really special and it makes it more fun. So now you have to decide where to get your seeds. There are tons of seed companies all around the internet. You can just go on and check them out. And if you're interested in getting their catalog, they'll usually send it to you for free. Just sign up, put in your mailing information, and they'll send you one out. Once you start shopping for seeds, you're going to start seeing a few terms, and I'll do my best to far oversimplify them. Some of the terms that you hear when you're looking at seeds are heirlooms or hybrids. And another term that gets thrown around a lot is GMOs. We've all heard that. So the really oversimplification way that I remember how to understand this is thinking about dogs. So if you think about breeding dogs, heirlooms are like a purebred dog. So breeding a lab to a lab is going to make a lab. And that's really what heirlooms are. They are varieties of plants. They are often associated with tomatoes, but they can be any plant. And they are varieties that have just been kept pure. They've oftentimes been handed down for generations. There's debate as to how long a seed or a variety has to be in existence before it's considered an heirloom. Some people say 50 years, some people say 100 years. Either way, they often tend to be these seeds and these plants that just have wonderful, very interesting histories. Hybrid, on the other hand, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a word that's gotten sort of a negative connotation, but hybrids are not bad in and of themselves. A hybrid just means that two plants got crossed. So just like if you crossed a lab with a Dalmatian, you would get some kind of cross between the two. Those puppies would have traits of both of their parents being two different kinds of dogs. So it's the same thing that if you were to cross two different kinds of okra or two different kinds of peppers, that if you were to save the seeds from a crossed fruit, that then its next generation of offspring would be some kind of mix of the two. They're not bad. A lot of times hybrids have been developed specifically for the purpose of being more resilient to pests and diseases. So those are all really good things. The growth of hybridization has really come from a need to ship food. We have started to demand, we all are living in a world now where we demand produce that is out of season. So it has to be grown somewhere else in the world and then transported to us. And in order to do that, they had to breed out any qualities that were not good for shipping. So they have bred these plants down to become very utilitarian, very functional. But like I was saying with the strawberries, they often lack the flavor. So, they've bred these strawberries to be big and fairly firm. They're not really soft. And they really lack a lot of the flavor that you would find in strawberries that you just picked right off the plant, that are very, very soft and tender and very sweet. But you know that they don't last long. After you pick them and you bring them in, you really have to eat them quickly to enjoy their full flavor because they'll go bad fast. So that's really where hybridization comes from. Many of the seeds that you buy that are hybrids are still going to be very delicious, nutritious, all of those things, not bad in any way. GMOs, on the other hand, you might see seeds marketed as non-GMO. Don't pay attention to any of that. It is illegal to buy or sell GMO seeds to home farmers or home growers. GMO seeds are only sold commercially to those big farms that are producing, massive amounts, and they have signed contracts with the companies who own these GMO seeds. You're never going to walk into a store and buy GMO seeds on accident. Not going to happen. So GMO and hybrid are very different things, and I think it's important to know that. The other thing that you might notice is organic, and organic seeds really just speaks to the way in which those seeds were created. They were created in an organic way. So just because you plant an organic seed doesn't mean that your fruit or vegetables are going to be organic if you haven't raised them in an organic way. If you're spraying pesticides or chemical fertilizers on your garden, those seeds that are now growing into a plant are no longer organic, and their fruit will not be organic either. So really, organic seeds only matters, I guess, if you are planning on being certified organic. So for myself, for example, I'm just a home gardener. I raise food for myself and my family and friends and family. I like to do things as organically as possible. I certainly try really hard not to use chemical products. I don't stress out about it a whole lot. And because I'm not selling my produce or trying to market my produce as being organic, I don't have to worry about whether or not my seeds are certified organic. Again, non-organic seeds, you can grow them to be organic. They're just not certified organic if they haven't been raised in a certified organic way. And there's a lot of hoops that you have to go through in order to be certified organic. I'm not interested in going through those hoops because they don't benefit me in any way. I know that what I grow is clean and organic. So where to get your seeds? You can order those catalogs, you can go and shop online. A couple other things that I'd really like to encourage you to look into are checking out if there are any local seed libraries. Your cooperative extension, there might be something around, or even if you've seen like those box libraries, like the little libraries that sometimes people have in their neighborhoods. I would love to start one, and I'd love to see more of them, but I know that they exist, that sometimes neighborhoods will have little seed libraries, a place where, everybody can work together to bring their extra seeds and share them that way. So you can sort of borrow seeds and then you replenish things back into the seed library. Another great option is seed swaps. If you go and search online, you'll find lots of people who are doing seed swaps. I did my first seed swap this year, and it was so much fun. You just pay a minimal fee to cover shipping and send in seeds, whatever the specifications for that person's seed swap are, and then they will in turn collect everyone's seeds, shuffle them all around so you don't get your own seeds back, and send them back out that way. And the one that I just did was from Whispering Willow Farm in Arkansas. And it was just a lot of fun. It was really cool to see all these different kinds of seeds come in And she did an awesome job making sure that you didn't get duplicates or things of the same kind. So I'm really excited to try a lot of these varieties, and I've gotten to make a whole bunch of new friends online by meeting all these people that sent me seeds. So it's a really neat way for us to use technology to bring us together in the gardening community. Seeds is one of those things that you just start collecting and you become a little bit of a hoarder, but they multiply so incredibly. These pumpkin seeds are from one pumpkin that I just saved the seeds out of because it was a perfect jack-o'-lantern pumpkin. And it's incredible how just one seed multiplies, like not just a few times, but hundreds and thousands of times sometimes. So once you get started, and if you get started into seed saving, you will find that you have tons and tons and tons of seeds as the years go on. But it just makes it really fun to then get to trade with other people to try new things and let them try things that you've grown. So seed swaps and seed libraries could be another really great option for very inexpensive or even free to get some seeds. And then you also want to think about how you're storing your seeds. My very first batch of seeds, I actually left outside in the rain. And because I didn't get to them quick enough to dry them out or anything like that, they were completely all ruined. So now I keep my seeds in these two little shoe boxes. I'm much more careful to keep them in a dry and cool place. Some people will say you need to put your seeds in the freezer in order to keep them. Really what is happening is as the years go on, the germination rate of your seeds might decrease. However, this is year 3 or 4 now that I've had some of the same seeds, and I've not had any really challenging germination issues with any of my seeds. So as long as you're keeping them dry and cool, you'll be all right. I would love to upgrade to something plastic and with greater subcategory options, because as my seed collection grows, I'm finding myself needing to narrow things down. So rather than having a tomato tab or category, I'm at the point now where I really need to break that down into cherry tomatoes or slicer tomatoes or paste tomato or whatever the different categories might be. All right, so now you're ready to get started planting your seeds. There's a few things that you need to know. So grab a notebook, grab your phone or computer so you can pull up Google or whatever search engine you want to use, but you need to know what zone you live in. And that can just be a real quick Google search, just search by your zip code. If you live in a very rural place, you can just do whatever the biggest city that's closest to you is. And this is going to tell you the zone that you are in. And really it just has to do with how cold on average your area gets. So I'm up in Maine. I live in zone 5A, I believe. There's A and B in each zone, and sometimes it can be a little, if you're on the line, it can be a little confusing which one you're in. The next thing you need to know is what your last frost date is. So that's going to be coming up in the spring, and that's the last estimated day that temperatures will dip down to freezing. This is completely a guess. So I always like to have like a 2-week buffer on the back end of that. So if the last frost date, my last frost date is May 9th. So I'll give it a couple more weeks before I actually transplant anything outside, just in case. Because again, it's just an estimate. It's based on historical records of temperature averages for your area. But it's the guess as to the last day that we could get down to freezing temperatures. And then your first frost date. So your first frost date is the first day that the frost comes in the fall. Or winter, whenever it is for you, if you have one. And our first frost date here in Maine in zone 5A is October 3rd. So what I do is I like to grab a calendar and mark both of those dates out. And then you can just do a Google search. I don't sit there and count the number of days in between, but you can Google search how many days between May 9th and October 3rd, and it will tell you how many days your growing season is. And that's really helpful information to start with. But as you're getting ready to start your seedlings, you first have to decide what growing medium you're going to use. Of course, there's tons of different ways to grow plants. We all know that. That's like a whole nother can of worms for another day. Basically what I mean right now is your soil that you're choosing. The only kind of soil that you want to stay away from is anything that's marked as garden soil. This is going to be really heavy, thick stuff. Made that mistake before. You can buy specifically seed starting mixes. They'll be nice and light and fluffy, and that's generally what you're going for, to give those tiny little seeds an opportunity to break through and send down roots, which are very small and tender at first. I have also just used potting mixes. Sometimes they tend to have like bigger chunks of like wood chips, or sometimes there's just the material is a little bit more clumped up, but I've still found that that works just as well. Seed starting mixes can be a little bit more expensive, so I use potting mix and I haven't had a problem with it. Next, you have to decide what kind of container you're going to be growing in. This is where you can get really creative with lots of recycling ideas. You know, people start seedlings in egg cartons. I have started many seedlings in red Solo cups. These can be saved from parties, whatever. You'll just want to make sure that you puncture holes in the bottom so that the water can drain out. But I've had great success growing, especially like tomatoes and peppers in these kind of containers. Nowadays, because I'm growing more things, I have found that it's just a lot easier to sort of streamline the process. I really enjoy using these black trays that don't have any holes in the bottom. For me, I have to start on my seeds inside because I don't have a greenhouse. So I need the water to be contained. And then I've just over the years like accumulated different little containers, different sizes and whatnot. The thing that you want to keep in mind when you're thinking about which containers to use is how long your seedlings are going to need to stay in these containers. So for things that we're going to get started sooner, like tomatoes and peppers, eggplants, stuff like that, you're going to want to make sure that you have containers that are big enough. If you started something like that in these tiny little egg cartons, you would very quickly be having to pot them up, as they say, into something bigger so that the roots have more space to spread out and develop. And the next thing that you need to think about is the light that your plants are getting. I'll put a picture up on the screen of the little seed starting setup that I have created. These are very basic shop lights that I think I got at Walmart or Home Depot. They are nothing special. They're not special grow lights. But it's enough for me to be able to get my seedlings started and give them a good head start. And the reason that I do this is because up here in Maine, in our zone, we have very short days in the winter, so we don't have a lot of sunlight. And that's a challenge when you are trying to start seedlings. This is an example of some cilantro that I just threw in a pot. I have a few herbs that I've very struggled to keep alive over the winter because they're not getting enough sunlight. So I threw some seeds in here just to see what would happen. And this is what you would call a leggy seedling. It is very leggy. This is no good. I don't know that these will really survive or do much of anything because they've got these long, long legs. They need, you know, a short, strong bottom, and this is not great. And you can see where it's sitting in the window. These plants are really reaching and trying to get to the sunlight. And that's how that legginess happens, is that they're not getting enough sunlight and they just have to continue to reach and reach, and they're not finding it. So that's a challenge. And that's why I invested this last year in setting up a little grow light station. But that's more for the things that I have to get started a little bit sooner. For me, things like that are like mid-February to late February. And we're still having some pretty short days at that time. So it just helps me, again, to get a little bit of a head start, a jump start on those things because I don't have a greenhouse or any place to put these that will get more sunlight. I'm just working with my windows. And then the last thing is water. Your plants need water. The smaller the container, the more frequently you have to water because there's less dirt to hold the water. So that's pretty simple. The other thing is sometimes you'll see those pots that are made of like peat moss or different like recycled cardboard kind of materials. I've struggled with those in the past. Sometimes they dry out really fast. Sometimes they don't let go of the water and then you have like weird mold things going on. But they still work. They definitely work. But I've found that having things in plastic and especially having things that are well drained in a secondary container that you can take them out if you happen to overwater is really helpful. All right, so the first step before you dig your fingers into the dirt is to grab a calendar. Last year, I used this really cute little lamb and goat calendar that my sister got for me. And again, we're gonna mark down that last frost and the first frost dates. So then we know the number of days in between those days. For seed starting, this is really helpful in counting backwards. So once you've got that last frost date, work backwards and just mark each week, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, going backwards. And then what you can do is as you're determining which plants you want to grow, which seeds you want to start, you can figure out how many weeks before the last frost should you start those plants. Do you mind? You can figure out how many weeks before the last frost to start those plants. And then I just make myself a calendar and I mark down on each week the seeds that I should be starting. It helps in that I have made the mistake in the past of just starting all of my seeds at the same time and starting them way too early. And what happens is you end up living in this jungle of plants. I had card tables and the coffee table and my kitchen table and any flat surface that I could find dragged over to the windows and just covered in plants. And they continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. I had to keep putting them up in bigger and bigger and bigger pots, and it just got absolutely ridiculous. So this is a big tip. I find that it helps to keep me on track, and it helps me to not start things too soon. The other thing that you want to determine is how many plants you want to grow. Mistake that I have made. I think the first year that I really successfully grew a lot of tomato plants, I just went so hog wild that after I had pulled out the tomatoes that I could actually plant in my garden, I had like 300 extra tomato plants. It was absolutely ridiculous. I sold some, I gave a lot away, just to not have to throw them in the compost pile, because that really broke my heart to waste those seeds in that way. So be careful about that. Really make a plan, figure out how much garden space do you have, how many plants do you really have space for. Always start extra. I'm not saying don't start extra. It's good to have extra just so that you can pick out the healthiest looking seedlings and go from there, and then have, some to bless your family and friends with. But 300 extra is probably a little bit too much. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. I'm gonna go throw a couple more logs on the fire and probably curl up with a notebook and my seeds and make some plans for the spring, because it's very white and very cold and snowy outside, and I need something green to dream about. If you could, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps us to grow this family's channel. And let me know if you do things differently, if you do things the same, what some of your seed starting 101 tips are. I'd love to hear them. Just drop those down in the comments down below. We will see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.